Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Well, my privilege to introduce Dr. Lynn Wagner. Dr. Wagner lives in the Green Bay area of Wisconsin, where it's still winter. She was just sharing with me some of her fun activities that she does from, I guess, is it like parasailing you do this time of year, or what is it exactly?
No, I mean, right. This time of year, it's more cross-country skiing, and maybe winter surfing. But then in the summer, you can do the kiteboarding.
Nice.
And
Beautiful.
boating.
Beautiful. Yeah. And of course, cold water therapy. We'll probably talk about that a little bit because I'm going to ask you a lot of
My favorite thing.
real technical questions here,
Yes.
Cold water therapy. People have been doing it since the beginning of time, right? We treat it like it was invented last week, right? But there's so much to do that, of course. And of course, you're the owner of Wagner Integrative Health there. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the therapies. You're a board certified emergency physician, and you've decided to use customized integrative therapies in your practice. And when did you make that decision and why?
I made the decision about 15 years ago. So I was working in the emergency room, and I had been for about 10 years. And I just kept seeing the same types of patients coming in. So obviously there's people who have trauma. So that's a different type of patient. They are in a car accident or, trauma is totally different. But I was seeing a lot of patients with chronic illnesses that we were saving them in the moment in the ER, but then they were going back to their life where they were, living a very unhealthy life that was leading to their disability, disabling illness, chronic illness, inflammation. So it was really hard to I'm just picking these people up, helping them temporarily to go back to what they were doing before, and they're going to continue to suffer. And I also, at that same time, was exploring natural therapies for my own health. So when had my first daughter, who's now in her 20s, I developed postpartum depression. And then for the two subsequent children after that, I still had postpartum depression, almost to the point I never was off antidepressants for about 9 years. And I just got to the point where I was like, I really don't think I have a neurotransmitter problem. Like, what is this? What is depression? So I did a really big deep dive on depression and brain health. And it led me to just discover multiple different alternative therapies and lifestyle choices I could make to support my brain, to the point where I didn't need to be on antidepressants anymore. And it just made me think, like, if I had just continued down the Western model and kept seeing my doctor once a year, they'd keep refilling my prescription. And then, as it happens with most people who have depression, it gets worse at times. So then they end up on like multiple medications. And I was just like, I don't want to do this. And for me, I saw my experience as something that I could apply to all these other people who were experiencing chronic illness, and they were only getting a pharmaceutical to treat it. And no one was talking about how they could change their life to not have that disease anymore. So that was kind of like the coming to a head of everything all together, where I found this fellowship, Dr. Andrew Weil, who's like a long-term integrative doctor, and he has an actual fellowship at the University of Arizona where they train medical providers on how to be more open to alternative therapies, and it's called integrative medicine. So that was kind of my starting point.
Oh, wow, I'm sure Dr. Weil, very, very, very famous man.
Yeah.
And you got a great statement, by the way, and I want to just quote it. True wealth is one's health.
Yes.
I think our listeners couldn't agree more, right? It's with Bobby Kennedy now being part of the new administration, right? I mean, he had a thing on Facebook the other day, and I think, to paraphrase it, if you're in medicine, you worry about all the sick people, but if you're like the sick person, you worry about one person.
Right.
Like that. And
Exactly.
Made sense,
Right. No,
Yeah.
and we all make hopefully most of us make deposits into our 401k or our retirement accounts. And I don't think people look at health the same, where we need to be making deposits regularly on a daily basis into that health account so that when we are older, not only do we have the money to enjoy retirement, but we have a body that's strong enough to do all the things we love to do when we were younger. So that's my biggest motivation.
Oh, yeah, could not agree more. So about 15 years ago, you made that decision to kind of join the integrative health movement from conventional medicine. And one of the things, and I'm really looking forward to your answer on this, we're hearing so much about peptides. What is a peptide, and why are we hearing so much now? Because it's not something that was invented last week, but A, what is it? And B, why are we all of a sudden hearing about it so much?
Well, peptides are just simply short amino acid chains. So they're little chains of amino acids, and there are actually many naturally occurring peptides in our body. So insulin, for example, is a peptide, and we make insulin. You can also take insulin as a drug. I think there was a lot of interest in peptides even before the GLPs came out, because a lot of people into anti-aging, longevity, biohacking have been using peptides for years for things like muscle repair, muscle growth, fat burning purposes, anti-aging, energy, and things like that. But then with the invention of the GLP drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro and those things, obviously those have blown up. So now people have more of a knowledge about peptides. And I look at peptides not as the cure for everything. They're kind of like a nice adjunct as needed for patients who are looking to live their healthiest and best life. So, if someone's carrying 20 extra pounds of fat, using a peptide like an Ozempic or a Wegovy or a Mounjaro can be really, really incredible. But you can't replace a healthy lifestyle with peptides. So I know of practitioners who will put their patients on 10 peptides. They're probably spending $1,000 a month, but the patient isn't making any reasonable changes in how they live their life day to day. And I don't think that's the best medicine. So they're a nice adjunct to healthy lifestyle, but they're not the cure all for everything. But we use peptides all the time in my practice.
Another thing we're hearing about quite a bit, and I'll admit on Friday I actually bought some of this product. So I love your thoughts. I hope you're not going to tell me, oh, you wasted your money, but hearing a lot about methylene blue.
So I love methylene blue. We don't currently use it in my practice. It's kind of on the to do later set of things for me. I look at methylene blue similar to doing things like NAD or NAD precursors, or a drug called naltrexone, which is the drug that's given to people when they overdose on heroin, but when it's given in microdoses can be really, really powerful for helping the immune system work better and boosting detox pathways and things like that. So I kind of clump methylene blue into that category. So I think it really depends on what your goals are and what other things you're using, because you don't need to use all of the things. But methylene blue, I think, is an excellent adjunct for the purposes of energy, immune support, detoxification. And you can take it orally, which is probably what you're doing. The one thing is it can make your toilet bowl blue and it can make your tongue blue, so that you can cry blue tears. So that can be kind of annoying for people. I also think methylene blue through an IV is very powerful. Again, we don't have that in my practice yet, but we probably will in the future.
And what about red light therapies?
I love red light therapy. So red light therapy, I think, is so powerful, and I love it because it hits so many different things. So you've probably seen the red light hats that people wear to help promote hair growth. There's red light masks people use to help with aging in the face. But I always tell people you may as well just get like a whole body panel, because then you're doing the hair, the face, but you're also getting all of the internal benefits of red light therapy. So red light therapy is really, really good for stimulating mitochondria, energy production, detoxification. It can help with tissue repair. So if you're an athlete and you're doing like long endurance races, it can help with repair. Or even if you're just a weekend warrior, I use a red light panel about 4 to 5 days a week.
And now at your clinic there in Wisconsin, I noticed you have several different IV therapies. Let's come back to the IV therapies in a second, because I've got a couple questions for you. I noticed you have a sauna and cold plunge, which
Yes.
you and I are both huge fans of that. But talk about that a little bit from a personal standpoint, and also why you recommend both therapies, which once again have been around for thousands of years, and
Thousands.
off, of course, has made cold water therapy sexy. and all the actors now doing it and all, but normal people like you and I are doing it with a lot of benefit. But why do you recommend it to your patients?
So I would say that starting a cold exposure protocol personally has been one of the things that has changed my life the most. I started about 2 years ago when we moved into the new spot for my clinic. And I do it 2 to 3 times a week. I try to get a total of about 10 to 15 minutes of cold submersion. And the research shows, and there's some really good research out there, that regularly exposing yourself to cold therapy has just a multitude of benefits. So from a cortisol perspective, your stress hormone, when you expose yourself to that extreme of cold, your first reaction is a spike in cortisol, you get a stress response. But then with habituation, meaning if you do it regularly, your body gets used to it and you get more resilient. So then it's not as uncomfortable. That's one thing that's really nice. So people, when they first start cold therapy, it's like, oh, hard to start. But then once you're doing it regularly, it's very easy. But then also what I have found and what I see with my patients is that you are giving yourself that stressful situation in the cold, but then when you're outside or doing your regular life, and let's say you have another stressor, whether it's you're driving in traffic and it's terrible traffic, or someone comes into your office and gives you bad news, your stress response isn't as much as it would have been if you weren't doing regular cold therapy because your body's habituated to handling stress better. So for me, that's been amazing because I'm a business owner. So like, every day you get hit with different stressors. And I just feel like my response is very even keeled. I don't get that spike. It's been very powerful for me from that standpoint. I also know that it helps boost your immune system. So it helps you fight off infections, cold and flu and things like that. It can also help you make brown fat, which when you're born, you have a lot of brown fat, which is very metabolically active because babies need to be able to stay warm. And we lose that rapidly as we age. But brown fat, you want more of it because you're burning more calories with it. So it's going to help you keep a leaner muscle or leaner body composition. I've also noticed it's really just good for skin. So if I can't do the plunge at our office, I'll do a 1 minute cold shower at home. And I feel like it just kind of decreases some of the inflammation, redness, and puffiness of your face. So if you're a woman like me and you're worried about appearance, it's nice.
Well, guys worry about it too, but not to the same
Not
extent.
as much, no. And it's just, I think it's just really fun. We do it a lot as a group. So we frequently will do it with our neighbors. We'll, drill a hole in the ice and we have a sauna and then we'll cold plunge. So it's just like a nice community-based thing you can do as well. Or couples like to do it together. I feel like it's a really nice like relationship building thing.
And I noticed something I'm not familiar with, halo salt therapy.
Right. So halo salt therapy is basically you have a room and it needs to be a small room. Ours is actually lined with salt tiles, which are more aesthetic than anything else. But then you have a machine that grinds up the salt into a fine particle and then disperses it through the air. That's really good for people who have chronic lung conditions or if they're sick or getting over a cold or sinusy. Also like cystic fibrosis patients, it would be excellent for. And then it's also actually really good for skin. So if people who have eczema, psoriasis, chronic skin conditions, they'll actually go in there and expose as much skin as possible to get that benefit of the halo therapy.
Interesting. I got to try
And
that.
it's really relaxing too.
Yeah, not bad. I was looking at it on the internet last night. It looks great. What are some of the IV therapies that you offer?
We offer a handful of different bags of fluids. So we have, your typical, one of them is called the WH drip, but that's very similar to the Myers cocktail, which is probably the most commonly known one in the integrative world. And that's just a nice mix of different vitamins and nutrients that are beneficial to you and that you might be lacking from your regular diet. And then we have our typical immune boosting IV. We have one that's called Peak Performance. So if someone's doing an athletic endeavor, it's a good one to get. We have one that's calming. So if you're struggling with insomnia, you can do it closer to the end of the clinic and it can help you relax into the evening and get a better night's sleep. We have recently added NAD therapy, that's a whole nother topic, but NAD is really powerful. And we're bringing in something called NR, which is a precursor to NAD. So NAD and NR are really important for energy production, detoxification, anti-aging, longevity. So I'm really, really excited about those. And then we have glutathione, it's known as the master antioxidant. So it helps to quench those free radicals that can cause DNA and tissue damage and lead to aging. So I usually have my patients doing kind of a combo protocol of different therapies based on what their specific needs are. Or if they're just coming in off the street, they can just pick from the menu what they think they need.
Interesting. Yeah, I was
And
in,
IV therapy is similar to peptides, where it's not the fix for everything, but if you're really someone who's into that whole wealthy lifestyle, it's a really, really nice adjunct to do, maybe once a week or twice a month doing an IV therapy. That's kind of what I do.
I was up in Tulsa, Oklahoma last summer, and I came out of a restaurant and I see a sign outside a place with all these IV therapies. And yeah, it was amazing. It's like the different things you could take an IV for. And I had a powerlifting meet the next day. So I'm like, well, I don't want to take anything that I'm not normally on, because any little thing can screw you up. Even if it doesn't screw you up physically, it screws you up here, that, well, I should have done that. I was like thinking, but
Right.
I love that idea where we're going with, functional integrative medicine, which leads me to my next question, doctor. What is the difference? It seems like they're the same thing, but I'm sure there's a difference between integrative and functional medicine. How do we as a consumer or a layperson differentiate?
That's an excellent question. So at my clinic, we call ourselves both an integrative and functional medicine clinic. So any physician or healthcare provider who wants to kind of like get out of the realm of Western medicine and explore this type of medicine, there's a couple of different training programs you can go through. And a lot of the training programs that are popular and are out there right now are labeling themselves as functional medicine. I chose to keep my practice as integrative medicine because I think Dr. Andrew Weil is an incredible, he's a pioneer. And I feel that integrative medicine is more focused on mind, body, spirit, and the organism as a whole. So all of these things like IV therapy, peptides, nutraceuticals, all these anti-aging things, they're wonderful. I use them in my clinic all the time, but you can't get a patient to their optimum state of health and vitality if you're not considering their health in terms of their mind, body, and spirit. And so we do a really thorough assessment on patients with that in mind. So we talk about what kind of traumas have you experienced? What's your emotional health like? What is your lifestyle like? And then I layer on top of that the functional medicine practices. I think functional medicine is more looking at specifically what is your gut health like? What are your vitamin levels like? Are your hormones balanced? So it's a little bit more techy and lab-based, which is great. So I like the layered approach of it.
So it's kind of like the traditional allopathic medicine meets alternative medicine.
100%. Right. So, and I tell patients that I still am born and raised in Western medicine. So a lot of the therapies I'm going to recommend will be rooted in Western medicine because it's not a defunct system. It's just very broken right now, but there's some really, really good pearls and things that I learned in that part of my life that I use every day.
Well, I know what I love about that, and I know like the doctor I go to here is very similar to you. He's a chiropractor, but I get my stem cell treatments there twice a year from an MD. An MD's got to give you the shots, and various other things that he's doing in his practice. And it seems like there's a business side to this stuff too, which we'll
sure.
talk to as well in a couple minutes here. But from a practical standpoint, the consumer says, "Hey, I'm hearing about peptides. I'm hearing about glutathione drips. I'm hearing about all of these things." And you don't want to go and the doctor says, "Well, I don't know about that," or "I'm not interested," or "Don't do any of that. Just do what I say." It's like we the consumer want more options in our health. And I wonder if you agree with this or not. It's not on my list of questions, but just kind of hit me. Do you think after COVID that your patients changed a little bit? I don't mean who they are. I mean, the same people, but you think that they started to say, you know what, after all the distrust with vaccines, good or bad, I'm not making a political statement here, right? Some people think they're good. Some people didn't take them. Me. But nonetheless, right? Because everybody did whatever they thought was right. But do you think we, as the consumer, when we come to someone like yourself and say, "Doc, I want to know what all my options are. Give me the full spectrum, and let me decide." And you tell me if I'm doing something totally flaky that you think is going to hurt me. Obviously, that's your job and your license and everything else. But do you think,
Right.
in other words, are you getting more I guess my real question is, are you getting more of the person saying, I want to take a real role in what I take and what I do versus just walking in and saying, take this pill or this shot or this whatever?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's more of an interest in people taking the reins back on their own health and questioning what they're hearing, either in the advertisements on TV or what their primary care doctor is telling them. They're asking a lot more questions. And I would say they're becoming empowered to realize that this isn't a dictator type relationship. Your doctor or patient relationship shouldn't be a do as I say dictator type relationship. It's a back and forth. It's these are what my needs are. These are the things I'm experiencing. What do you recommend? And are you willing to look outside of the box a little bit to something that, maybe isn't FDA approved or isn't standard of care? Because I think that's really important. They say, I don't know what the stats are now, but in the past, it's been that a new therapy takes 10 to 12 years to become part of traditional medicine. So you have something that's discovered, researched, proven, and before it actually gets into the textbooks or the training for medical students and residents and things like that, it can take quite a while. So you want to be working with someone that's willing to look at the newest science and be like, yep, this seems safe. I'm not going to harm you. And you might have a really, really nice upside to it.
Great, great. Yeah, I appreciate that because I've asked a couple doctors that too, and it's had similar answers where it's like, yeah, they're coming in and they're asking us stuff that sometimes we go, we don't know.
Oh, every day, every day. Yeah, every day.
There's a lot of new stuff as we both
And a
know.
lot.
Well, let's talk about this, okay? NAD for a second, because I see that along with the methylene blue, the red light therapy. I see NAD every time I turn around. I see Dave, what's his name?
Asprey.
Asprey. I mean, he's pitching it, and a number of other biohackers are there. What exactly is NAD, and am I being redundant if I'm already taking a glutathione supplement and methylene blue to take that as well? Am I just spending more money for the same, or is it doing something completely different than those therapies would already be doing?
No, I mean, NAD is my probably current favorite thing. It's a molecule that we have in our bodies and it declines as we age. And it's mostly important for making energy, so ATP production and detoxification of your overall system. And there's obviously multiple other things that it does. And NAD has been really popular. It's really hard to absorb orally, so you can't really take NAD as an oral supplement. So the IV therapy NAD has been very, very popular. What's what's bad about that is NAD infusions can be very uncomfortable. So you get heaviness on your chest. You can feel some tingling in your extremities. Your heart might race a little bit. You might feel like you're going to go to the bathroom. So you have to do it over 1 to 2 hours, sometimes even up to 8 hours if you're getting really, really high dose. And also, the studies I would say are showing that it might not be the best way to get NAD boosted in your body. So there's precursors that become NAD, specifically NR and NMN. And they're showing that if you actually take those as supplements, or you can take NR as an infusion, you're actually going to be able to boost your NAD levels better. I can anecdotally tell you, I started doing NAD infusions within the last couple of months. And in that time, I ran my fastest half marathon. And I did this ski marathon just this past weekend. It's like 30 miles of cross country skiing, 3,500 feet of elevation gain. And it was my 5th one, and it was the fastest or the best I've ever felt and done on that race with very little training. So, and the only thing that I've really added was the NAD infusions.
Interesting. Well, I got to. There's a place in the next town. I guess I got to make an appointment.
Yeah, no. So I'm a huge fan, huge fan. And I think your question about do you need to combine that if you're already doing glutathione, and the answer is yes, because glutathione is completely different. That's the antioxidant, and so you actually need NAD to help make glutathione. So they're a really nice pair. So in my clinic, I try to get people to do combo therapies of both glutathione and NAD or NAD precursors for their optimum benefit.
Great. And how does somebody find somebody like you locally? Now you're in Wisconsin, obviously, so people up there can come and see you. And I'm going to ask you in a minute about telemedicine, but obviously you can't give an IV, over the phone. So is there a national organization that you belong to that somebody says, hey, I'm on this same page? Which, by the way, a lot of our listeners are in the alternative space, one way, shape, or form. You're in a direct selling industry where companies that sell supplements, so they're already thinking this way. But they say, hey, I live in Phoenix or I live in Michigan, and where do I find someone like you?
So I would say, honestly, word of mouth is probably the best way to find someone because you could go to like the Institute for Functional Medicine and look at their database of providers, but providers are not going to be listed on there unless they've actually done like the full fellowship, which if you look at my training pathway, I did the Integrative Medicine Fellowship, and then all of my training since then has been functional medicine training, but I'm not going to ever do the full certification because it doesn't really, I don't need it to practice. Um, but I would say, so I wouldn't be listed on their website, but there might be, I'm trying to think of how to say this nicely. I have some concerns about providers who will do like the full functional medicine training, but they don't have a medical background. So you can be a non-medical person and you can become certified in functional medicine, but you've never practiced medicine before,
Oh, okay.
meaning traditional medicine. And I can't tell you how important it is to know physiology, pathology, pharmacology, have practiced in a Western medical setting and actually dealt with patients. So I get a little concerned when there's people out there prescribing medications or doing therapies when they don't have a medical base. So really word of mouth is the best. But you can also go to, the integrative medicine website and look at providers there. You can look at the functional medicine websites and look for providers there, but I would still say hands down, word of mouth is the best. And honestly, too, just trying someone out and seeing if it's a good fit for you. If you go to a provider and they're trying to order $2,000 worth of labs on you and put you on 20 supplements, I think that's a little too much.
Yeah.
I think then you're looking at someone who might be trying to like make money and, you know, I don't love how that feels. So it's really just what works best for you. And maybe you're someone who likes to take that many supplements and that's okay too. But I think just trying it out and seeing if it's a good fit is really important.
Well, I think what you said there too is that's kind of sage advice. It's like the person should really have a medical background that like yourself has said, okay, let me segue into these things because either their own personal health led them to that direction, or but not just that they're a glorified vitamin salesperson who's going to
Right.
done 20 things, but and some of them are going to be redundant, frankly. They're just going to make
For sure.
expensive fecal matter, so let's not do that.
Right. And you have to think about liver health and kidney health and like, at some point it's going to be too much and you can start to harm the person by taking too many things.
Yep, yep. So let me ask you this, Doc. A couple other things here. What do you think is going to happen now? Okay, so Robert Kennedy is in. So make America healthy again is a thing, right? Whether we did or didn't vote for that administration for the next 4 years, Bobby Kennedy's in.
Right.
And what do you think is going to be some of the things that not only he's going to implement, but what kind of changes are you expecting on your end as a provider?
Well, I for one think that it's going to give more, you can call it brand awareness, but people are going to, a lot of people don't even know what integrative and functional medicine are. Every new patient, I still have to tell them, okay, this is what we do, this is what it's all about. And a lot of people don't know about it. I just gave a talk to a group of, maybe 100 women last week, and most of them didn't even understand or know what I did, which was just, I've been immersed in this business for 15 years. So for me, it's just like, this is the way of life. So it's going to be brand awareness and a growing awareness that there are alternative therapies. And I'm excited because some of the basic stuff that I shouldn't have to be telling patients to do in a patient appointment. So getting sunlight exposure, exercising every day, eating clean, all those basic things that are the tenets of a healthy lifestyle, I think are going to become more apparent because he'll be sharing and posting, and then people will be reposting and people will be podcasting about it. So I think it's going to help immensely. And then I think our food system is going to get insanely cleaned up. It's going to take some time, but that is going to be incredible.
I don't have this question here either because I could keep you all day on multitude of questions. But so you're not too far from Canada, where I spend a lot of time, and my wife is Canadian, and we've lived there, we own homes there, and all sorts of things. And conversely, in Texas, I'm not that far from Mexico. Both countries have a much cleaner food system than we do in the United States. We're supposed to be the leader, if you will, in everything. Well, we're not when it comes to that. So do you
No.
think a lot of those chemicals that the food companies here in the United States use, that are the same food companies, by the way, in some cases in those countries, and they don't use them there, but they use them here. Do you think
Right.
we're gonna see a lot of junk get out of our food once and for all?
I do. I mean, you think about the person, I think she's the food babe. You've heard of her, right? So I've been following her for over 10 years. And, at first she came off as crazy, not to me, but to the general public. People would think she's just crazy. And now she's in the White House linking arms with, Kennedy and bringing to light all of these things like the dyes and the chemicals and the substances that are in our processed foods that are so incredibly harmful. And I also think that there will be some repercussions to these companies that have designed foods that are hyper palatable, meaning they taste really, really good and are addictive, and B, are disease provoking. So there's going to be some repercussions to that, similar to the tobacco industry, the food industry has created products that have led to a nationwide obesity epidemic, childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, fatty liver disease. Just it's very obvious. You've seen the beach picture from the 50s versus a beach picture from today.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because whenever I like old movies sometimes, and we'll even watch the old Alfred Hitchcock hour. And I said to my wife, I said, you notice there was a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, the actors and actresses were naturally in decent shape, even if
Mhm.
they smoked like chimneys, even in the movies, right? One
Right.
cigarette after another, but they generally were not overweight. And you look today, a lot of our actors and actresses, they are 15 to 20 pounds heavier, just quote unquote naturally. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, they grew up eating processed food. And even
Right.
if they're aware, like you and I are, of what they put in their body, which a lot of them are, but it's tough because a lot of times it's just a time thing. Well, I got to eat something. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this is available, and then you find out it's adulterated. Even in our fruits and vegetables, there's so much stuff that's adulterated. You
Right.
know, I remember, for example, when we were living in Canada, my son was playing hockey in Ontario, and we were coming back from the rink on a Sunday, and they had a farmer's market. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to pull in there." And he said, Dad, don't buy some of that stuff." He goes, "It looks weird." And I go, "No, Fred, this is the way an apple actually looks."
Right.
The farmer just
Supposed
took
to
the
be all more, yeah.
like
Supposed to
this
have
is the way
pumpkin.
they really don't come in bags and they're all the
Right.
same exact size, right?
Right. Our strawberries aren't supposed to be the size of a car.
Exactly, exactly. So our young people are going to get an education, hopefully.
Right.
So couple more questions, Doc. I don't want to keep you all. I do want to keep you all day, but I know you got other things to do. But what habits, health wise, can somebody do short term and long term? Let's just say over the next 30 days.
Mhm.
And then second part of that question is 60 over the next 6 months.
So I would say 30 days would be educate yourself on an anti-inflammatory diet. So you've mentioned that you're vegan. I actually tend to be more towards, I'm not carnivore, but I eat mostly meat, vegetables, eggs, a little bit of dairy and fruit. Um, Either way, educate yourself on what foods are anti-inflammatory and what foods provoke inflammation. So what does it mean to eat foods that are whole, natural, as close to their original source as possible? So I think educating yourself on that is really, really important. And there are so many different programs out there online you can use to do that. Um, and then making a decision to start to incorporate some of those healthy diet principles into your life. And diet is really, it's an amazing thing because you can start at one point and then it just evolves. I didn't start thinking about what I ate until I was in my early 30s, late 20s maybe. And I grew up on the standard American diet for sure. So high sugar, processed foods, soda, everything. And it continues to evolve because you learn to know what makes your body feel the best, what gives you the most energy, what makes your gut feel not bloated and crampy, and you just get to evolve with it. So it's definitely not something that happens overnight, but I think the first 30 days is just educating yourself on it. And also with diet, simple thing to do would be just to like cut out the extra sugar because if you look at anything that's packaged, if it's ketchup, if it's a soup, if it's a granola bar, most of those things in our grocery stores have had sugar added to them. And so most of us are getting our extra sugar from these processed foods and we don't even know about it. So it's just like starting to look out for how much sugar you're taking in. And then just cutting back on the processed foods. So that would be the diet thing. And then I I don't know how people live without exercising. So just thinking about that and thinking about the fact that, you know, back in the day we were farming and that women were doing housework and we were moving. And now, you know, on a typical day when I see patients, if I don't do a form of exercise, I might get 1,500 to 2,000 steps that day. You know, it's literally sitting all day long, which is so bad for you. So it's just thinking about how much are you actually moving every day? And if you're not someone who likes exercising, how do you just start getting more steps in? You know, taking a 1 mile walk, parking your car further from the entrance to the grocery store, which most people don't even go to grocery stores anymore because you can order everything. You know, it's just we have to move.
Kind of
So I would say for the 30 days, those would be the biggest ones, diet and exercise.
great, great. And you know, the blue zones, right?
Right.
You know, there's a documentary out now that wow, I'm having a 60-plus-year-old moment. I know that guy's name. I for years.
Dan Butner, is it Dan
Go,
Butner?
thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
I saw him. Yep.
But there's a great documentary, folks, if you haven't seen it, that you should watch that he's done. I think it's on Netflix and Hulu and some of the other ones. And I watched it a couple times, but to your point, right, Doc, it's like a lot of these people, you know, if you're in the middle of Greece somewhere and you're a farmer, you're doing farmers walks all day, you're
Right.
carrying buckets of milk or
You're
water.
not going to the gym.
Yeah, and I mean you're from Wisconsin. I mean you've got great athletes from Wisconsin, like you know, like the Watt brothers, for example, that grew up on dairy farms, right? I mean, they didn't go to the gym after work. They've been carrying
No.
all day, you know.
Right.
You know, so but to that point, right? Those people move naturally, where we in America have to almost, well, we got to go to the gym or the park or something. Where you know some people are just doing it, you know, as part of the course of their work. So a couple
Right.
of quick questions, Doc. Do you do telemedicine? If anyone's interested.
I do. However, the FDA makes it really tricky because in order to prescribe a controlled substance, for example, you have to have your DEA in each specific state. So I used to hold my license in about 6 different states, but then I'd have to do a DEA license for each state. And honestly, the amount of continuing education you do have to do for all of these different certificates is a little overwhelming and it can be pricey. So that's one thing. And then if you're seeing someone out of state, you have to see them in person at least once a year. There are a lot of practitioners who are not following the rules, but I'm very respectful of my medical license. So currently, most of my patients come from Wisconsin. We also can see Michigan patients. And then I still have my license in Florida at this time, but I'm not doing a lot of national work.
Got it. Got it. If people do want to reach you, though, like if they're visiting, you know, Wisconsin and beautiful state, by the way, been here a few times. Still got to get to the Dells. I have a friend who actually bought a minor league hockey team in the Dells, and
Oh, really?
he always invites us up, and there's always some reason why we don't go. But now that I'm getting closer to retirement years, it's like I got a long list of places, and that's one
Right.
of them. You know?
Right.
But if they want to come up and see you, you know, could they do that even if they're out of state? And
Definitely.
also, how do they reach you?
So the easiest way to reach us is if you go to our website, wagnerintegrativehealth.com, there's book an appointment. There's our phone number on there, so you can call and look at the schedule on available times. For myself specifically, further in advance is best because I book out quite a ways, but I also have several nurse practitioners. We have a physician's assistant who's starting at the end of the month. We have a naturopathic doctor here. So there's a lot of different people doing all of the same things that I am. But I would say calling the office or booking through the website is probably the best way. We also have a website or an email. It's clinic@wagnerintegrativehealth.com where people can email and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Do I seem like a good fit for your practice? So I get those emails all the time and I can say, absolutely, yes, we can take care of you. Most of the time we say yes. But sometimes it'll be a syndrome or a disease that I'm like, no, that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't think it's worth you spending the money and doing a consult with us, but that's very rare.
Great. Well, Doctor, this has been a privilege. I appreciate being able to, you know, pick your brain for 45 minutes. I could probably do it for another 45 very easily. Just so many different topics that we did touch on and so many that we didn't, because, you know, as you know much better than I do, this is an evolving science, if you will. You know, we're living at such interesting times and, you know, lots of questions. But I do thank you again. And we talked about habits a little bit, but if there's one last word you'd like to give to our listeners?
I would say, I talked about diet and exercise, but I would say sleep. People need to sleep. People need to sleep the amount of hours that they need. And everyone's different. Some people can get by on as little as 4 hours a night. Some people need 10 hours a night. So you need to find out what your body needs. And I frequently will encourage my patients to buy a sleep tracker like the Aura Ring or the Whoop Band and just wear it for 3 to 6 months to see what your body actually needs. I don't think they're great for long-term use. I don't love all of that tech on the body all the time. But I think really understanding how much sleep you need and are you getting good quality sleep makes just a world of difference for how your brain functions, mental clarity, energy, mood. It's huge.
Yeah, I know the Aura rings are yeah, I know a lot of people wearing them.
Yeah, I have one. I do little check-ins every once in a while, but I don't wear any kind of tracker every day.
Yeah, I'm like you. It's like I like to release the technology at night. I don't keep my cell phone in my room. I have no
Right.
technology. I black everything out. I keep it cool. Yeah, I just kind of need my baby rest.
Right. And it's good to be intuitive about what you need. You don't want a device to always have to tell you like, oh, you shouldn't work out today. I'm like, I just want to see how I feel and work out if I want to.
Well, yeah, like we said, those farmers in these places around the world that are living to 100 that don't go to the gym, and
Right.
half of them have a diet that you go, oh my Lord, what are you eating? And
Right.
it's like, yeah, and they're healthy as horses, so
Right.
yeah, sometimes we can't figure it out. But Doc, this has been a privilege. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.